I am Serona Elton. I am the head of educational partnerships for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Today, we're going to be explaining the difference between a portal user and a member. I know that can be a little confusing, and that's why we're going to focus on that today. That also means that today, any questions from our participants, really, we're looking for questions focused on that topic. We do other webinars on a recurring basis that are much more broad in terms of what they cover, where we're happy to entertain really any question. But today's session is one of those really focused ones. So a couple of housekeeping matters. So this is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting. And what that means is we have a Q&A option. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A option. That's where you should put your questions. Please do not put your questions in the chat. We will share information with you in the chat. There's a team of people always in the background we like to call our webinar queens. Today we have Kara with us, and she'll be posting information in the chat for you, like links to pages on our website that connect to what we're talking about. But please put your questions in the Q&A because that's where we're going to look at the end to try and answer them. Okay. All right. So the way it's going to work, I'm going to introduce you to my colleague in a second. We're going to make a presentation to you briefly, and then do a bit of a demonstration for you, and then take some questions. Okay. So let me go ahead and bring out my colleague. We are joined now by Lindsay Major. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey.
Hey, Lindsay is our head of customer experience. And so she is going to, kick this off with an explanation. And then I'm going to come back in and share a little more. And then we're going to kick it back to Lindsay and then some questions. So let me go ahead and get the presentation going for you, Lindsay, and then you can take it from there.
Great. Thanks. Okay, perfect. So as Serona mentioned, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the user-member relationship. So just to define these two terms very quickly, a user is just a person that has that login to the portal. So you need the first step to membership is becoming a user. That sets you up with your login and whatever permissions that are required, what type of access you need for the member. And then your member is the person or entity that has the right to collect those U.S. digital mechanical royalties. So your member is typically the entity that is the payee. And these relationships are one to many, many to one. So one user can have access to multiple members under the same user account, just as many users can have access to one member. So you don't have to have multiple logins. You'll always have one user login that can give you access to however many members you may need, whether that's 1 or 3 that you're managing. Just as if you're wondering, well, I have a partner who already set up a member, can I have access to that? Yes, you can. That person who has access to that member can add you as a user. We're going to go ahead in a little bit and show you how that works, but just to kind of set up what the relationship is between the user and the member. And in terms of permissions, so there's 3 levels of permissions when we're talking about users. So your super user is typically the owner of the member account. So this super user, and you can have more than one super user on a member, but the super user or users on the member can do everything. So that means that they're able to view works, they can see all the statements, they can edit member information, they can do everything on an account. They're also the ones who are able to add other users and specify what those permissions should be. Your copyright user is the user, and when they log into the portal, they'll be able to see all works information. So you can view works, create new works, update existing works. They can really do all the catalog management, and that's about as much as they'll be able to see or do within the portal. And then your finance user is somebody that will be able to manage banking and tax information, as well as see royalty statements, download those royalty statements. And that's the level of access that they'll have. So that's sort of the difference between your users and how those work in the portal. And now I'm going to pass it back to Serona.
All right, so sorry, I got so many buttons going on here. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of an overview or a reminder about who needs to become a member of the MLC. And so firstly, I'm going to tackle the stuff that's a little more obvious, and then we'll get to the stuff that maybe is a little more confusing. So music publishers, publishing administrators, and mechanical rights organizations that are based outside of the United States. Those parties all who may be entitled to collect US digital mechanicals, right? If they are entitled to collect those mechanicals from licensees in the United States, they all should become members of the MLC. And we call our catchphrase for becoming a member is connect to collect. That's how we say become a member. That's what that means. And then once they are members, oops, sorry, wrong button. Once they are members, they are also able, by having a user account that's connected to a member, right? They are able to make updates to the musical works in the portal. So publishers, administrators, and outside of the United States, mechanical rights organizations that collect on behalf of their members from the United States, those all need to become members of the MLC. That's a bit straightforward, I think. I think most of those parties kind of understood that. This is the part where it's a little tricky because it's different than what a number of writers have had to deal with before. So if you are a songwriter, composer, or lyricist, you might need to become a member, but you might not need to become a member. So let's talk about when you do and when you don't. If you self-administer any of your songs, so if there's any of the songs you've written and you are essentially the publisher of those songs, you have not authorized a publisher or an administrator or a mechanical rights organization, if you've not authorized any of those parties to administer the works that you control, then you are self-administered and you should become a member. You should connect to collect and you need to play your part. Now, if you do not self-administer any of your songs, so let's say you've written 10 songs that have ever been recorded and all 10 songs are administered by a publisher or an administrator or an ex-US, that's our shorthand for outside the US, an ex-US mechanical rights organization, if you do not administer any of your works at all, then you do not need to become a member because those parties will register your works with us. They will collect the royalties from us, and then they will route those royalties back to you. But I do want to point out that even though you're not going to become a member, there is still an active role that you can take to make sure that your data is correct. And so on our website, we have what we call our public search. Up in the top right on our website, themlc.com, there's a button that says public search. Anybody can go and look up a musical work in that public search and see what that ownership data says. And so if you are a songwriter, lyricist, composer who is not going to become a member because some other party administers your works, we encourage you to please look up that data on our public search and make sure it's correct. And if it's incorrect, if there's something missing, the way to get it fixed is to go to that party that administers that work for you and have them fix it. Only they can correct it. But let's be honest, there is nobody other than the songwriter who has more at stake, who has more on the line to make sure that data is correct, because that data is going to get them paid. And so there is still a very active role you can take, even if you're not going to become a member. Why there is some confusion here is that it's different than it works in the performing rights side of the house, right? So we're dealing with mechanical rights, but out there's also performing rights and performing rights organizations out there. We call them PROs like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC. And the way it works for songwriters is every songwriter should be a member of a performing rights organization, every single one of you. It is not the case that every single writer should become a member of the MLC, right? Only writers who are administering their own publishing should become members of the MLC. We don't have this concept of a writer share and a publisher share. And you don't become a member as a writer or a publisher. It's much simpler than that. If you are the party who is administering the musical works, then you become a member. And so you'll be able to fill in information about who the songwriters are, but you would be joining because you are administering the work, not because you are a writer. So one other thing I want to share with you before I kick it back to Lindsay. Two things actually. How do you become a member? You go on our website. Up in the top right, there's a button called Connect to Collect. That is how you kick off the process. That's where it all begins. And by the way, membership is free. In case there was any question, membership is free. I also want to walk you through a little bit of the high level process so that you know what happens after you click that button, right? So remember, Connect to Collect means that you're becoming a member of the MLC. That's just our nifty catchphrase. Connect to collect, right? Connect with the MLC so you can collect your US digital mechanical royalties. And so overall, that process is really a three-step process. First, you become a user, right? And that is you as a human being, as an individual, getting a login to the portal. And there's an identity verification step that happens as part of that. So we know who you are as a person, right? Then the next step you go through is actually creating a member or multiple members, right? This is now creating that entity in the system that is the party with the rights, right? And that could be a person, that could be a company, but it's that party who has the rights to collect these mechanical royalties. So you go through the process of creating a member, you kick that off, right? I want to create a member, and then you go through some questions about the kind of member that you're going to be creating. And so there is this kind of, it's become a user and then create a member and then fill in information about the member, right? So sort of think of it that way. And it all begins with you getting a portal login, becoming a user first. Last thing just to share with you in the presentation, when you get to the stage of creating a member, you are prompted with several questions. And so we know that questions can be maybe a little confusing. And so we created something called our membership quick guide, which you can find on our website. It's a PDF, you could download it. And it helps give you a little more context so that you can pick the option that applies to you on the screen. That's really like the third step though, right? You become a user, you start creating a member, and then you start answering questions about the kind of member. And this quick guide can help you navigate that third set of activity where you're trying to figure out what kind of member to select. Okay, all right, so I am going to kick it back to Lindsay now. Let me come out of screen share, kick it back to Lindsay, who is going to actually show you some of those screens in action. Okay, Lindsay.
Thanks, Sarona. I am sharing my screen. So as Sarona mentioned, for how to become a member, first step, I'm at the website right now, and you'll click this Connect to Collect button. So as we mentioned, first step in becoming a member is becoming a user and signing up for that user account. So when you hit Connect to Collect and you land on this page, what you're doing is setting up your portal account. It's very critical that as you're filling out this information, that you're putting in your personal information. And we try to help you out along the way and prompt you to do so. The reason you need to fill out your personal information is because what you're doing here is once you set up that profile, we do an identity verification. The reason we do that is to help protect our users and members from any type of fraudulent activity. So you'll fill out your personal information. Once it's off, all the required fields are filled out. You'll accept our terms, enroll in the email communication so you don't miss any important updates, and then click sign up. That will automatically trigger our verification process. And it's a pretty immediate response that you get about whether the verification passed or whether we need a little bit more information. If you do get an email indicating that we need a little bit more information before we can verify, that's not a problem. It's nothing that we probably can't fix. You'll just need to reach out to the support team and we'll let you know what we need to do to kind of look into it a little bit further. But it's pretty simple, and pretty immediately what the next step is out of here. So one quick hot tip for anybody who fills out all of the required fields, but the sign up button stays gray and you can't click it. What we've learned is most of the time it's because you've missed this country code in the phone number. We're working on making it a bit more obvious, but double check and make sure you've chosen whatever the appropriate code is out of this drop down. That'll more than likely be the thing that's missing. So now I'm going to pop into my user account here. So I've been verified. I'm good to go. This is my MLC portal account. So from here, I can now create a member. So I'll click this button and start the member sign up process. So another thing, Serona did mention the membership guide. I highly suggest you take a look at that with help and figuring this screen out. We have heard your feedback. We are working on an entirely new membership sign up flow. So that will be coming over the next probably several weeks or so. But for now, if you need help navigating the screen, definitely check out that membership guide. But most often you're going to select number one. You're never going to select number two. And if you do select number two, you're going to be prompted to reach out to support where we can tell you to pick a different option. Number three is specifically for those of you who have partial administration. So let's say some of your catalog is administered by a publisher or administrator or whatever the case may be, but some of your catalog you own the rights to administer. You'll need a member for the works that you have the right to administer and collect on. And then the last one, it says songwriter, but this could also apply to publishers who maybe have outsourced the administration to somebody else. If somebody else is responsible in any flavor, responsible for collecting those mechanicals on your behalf, if you select this option, you'll be bumped out because you don't need a member. Somebody else is doing it for you. So like I said, though, most often you'll be selecting the first option. Excuse me. And then when you get to this screen, this is where we're going to collect all of your member information. So we already have your user information. We know all about you. Now we need to know about your member and what you're trying to set up. So if you are a business entity, so you're a publisher who has a business license, a tax ID associated with that business, you will put in your publisher information and your business information in all the required fields. These identifiers, as you can see, they are all optional, but they are very helpful for us when we're going through the matching process. So, so let's say if you have a publisher IPI number, put it in there. If you've been affiliated in the past with HFA and you do have this publisher account number, put that in. The reason I say that is because we'll have in a lot of cases, in all cases, if you've been affiliated with HFA in the past, we have probably a lot of your works already. We just need to get that information so we can more easily associate it with that entity and set up your member a little quicker. If you don't have this information, we can still do it. It just makes the process a little faster. Now, if you're an individual, so you're a self-administered songwriter, I don't have a legal entity. I just collect on my behalf. You'll just put in your, you can see you can click this button to put in your existing user account information. You'll put in your personal information, select individual, and that's how you'll do your member. So that's a quick, I know I went through that pretty quickly. We do have lots of resources on the website to kind of help walk you through this. Again, that membership guide has all of the tips and tricks to filling this out. But if you do hit a snag, you can always reach out to the support team and we're here to help for sure. So now I'm going to log out of this test account and I'm going to log into a different test account and show you how to add other users. So this is your use case of my member is set up. I'm a super user on my account and maybe I need to add a couple of my, sorry, I'm trying to talk and type at the same time, not being very successful. So let me try that again. Oh, it's not going to let me log in. Let me try to log in using something else. I'm going to stop sharing real quick while I get this figured out. But so this would be for when I'm the super user, I've set up the member and I just need to maybe add my colleagues or add somebody that needs access to this member for whatever reason. Maybe I have the member, I am the member, but I have a business manager that registers my works, or I work for a publisher and I've got several employees that need access to this member. Let me share my screen again. I'm in. This will be how you can add users and select the proper permissions. So I'm in my my user account. This is the member that I am managing or I have access to. You'll click View Member. And then again, I'm a super user right now. So that's why I can see all these things. Now, if I were a copyright user, I'd be able to see this catalog, but none of this information. If I was a finance user, I would not be able to see catalog. I would not be able to see user permissions, but I could see the royalties and banking information. But I'm a super user, so I can do everything. I'm going to click into this. I'm going to click user permissions, add user. And this is where I can add the name, the first name, last name, email address, and then whatever the access is that this person needs. Now, when you send this invite, the person you're sending the invite to will get an email from the MLC saying, so-and-so has added you to this member. You now need to set up your password. When that user sets up their password, they're in there and they're good to go with whatever the permission is that you set for them. I will say though, when you add a user this way, that temporarily bypasses the identity check because somebody who is already verified is adding you. If the person that you added needs to create a new member, they will be prompted to get verified in that moment. And when you try to add the member, it'll give you a message that says you need to get verified. If you get that message because you were added by another user, all you need to do is go up into this right-hand box, click profile, and mine says verified, but you will see a blue button that looks like this that says get verified. You'll just click on that and it'll prompt the verification process. You might need to fill out your user and you'll need to fill out your user information so we can run the check, but it'll be at that point. But again, that's only if you're adding a member. If you have no intention of adding a member and you're only going to be registering works, you're only going to be managing that banking and tax, you don't really need to worry about it. So that is how you add users. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, bring Sirona back out, and we can take some questions.
All right, awesome. So we've been answering questions all along. And actually, I think there's just one right now that I need you to help answer, I think, Lindsay. And then we'll wrap up. This is one of those really kind of super targeted, focused, short mini webinars. So the question is from Derek, and I think this is going back to when you're creating the member, because certainly for a user, you need to use your real name because your identity is going to be verified. But when you're creating a member, he's asking, do we use our real name or our stage name? How would you kind of answer that one there, Lindsay?
Yeah, I would recommend using your real name if those are the two options. Now, one thing I will say, sounds like you're a self-administered songwriter probably. So in that case, I would recommend that. However, if you are affiliated, if you're a member of a PRO, you're affiliated with the PRO and you have a name that you use at the PRO, it's best to probably match that and use that same name. So if you don't worry about it, just use your own name. But yeah, that's the stage name. I wouldn't recommend using that.
Right. Actually, I think we can squeeze in one more question. This one's from Brian. He says his wife and he created a record label and a publishing company. That publishing company is affiliated with ASCAP. And they had to file as partners due to song ownership. We have 45 songs that are currently, distributed. Do we both have to sign up as members and users? Okay, Lindsay, I'm going to try. And then you tell me, correct me, Lindsay. Lindsay, give me a grade. Okay. If you have a publishing company that controls 100% of the musical work, like, the entire musical work, then you could both become users so that, either one of you can log in, but there'll be one member, your publishing company. If, let's say, actually you have two publishing companies, for some reason, and you each split each musical work 50% each, then there'd be two members and each one would claim 50% of the work. But it sounds like, because you have a publishing company, doesn't matter that you co-own it, the ownership of the entity is a separate factor. We're not diving into ownership of the entity. We're looking at ownership of the musical work. And so while you guys might co-own the business entity, that doesn't matter. There's one entity, the publishing company, sounds like, that administers 100% of that work. And so the both of you could be users, but you would both be connected to that one member. All right, Lindsay, how'd I do?
Great. That was perfect.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. Gold star. All right. So I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you for joining us. I know we had a relatively small crowd, but I'm assuming you were super interested in this topic. So thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.